Alright, so hello everyone and welcome back to Strategy Sunday, Volume 13. This time we are taking a closer look on one of the newest fighters released in the Slings and Arrows set, being William Shakespeare. Um, just a small disclaimer before we start. Just like I said, this set is still really new to the competitive scene. It hasn't even been released officially for the rest of the world yet. Um, so take everything that I say right here with a grain of salt. We have already tested him a bit, but since he is pretty new, people are still trying to figure out what is the optimal playstyle for him in every matchup. Um, so there might still be there may be changes like in the future when you're coming back and look at this video. Yeah, okay, maybe that card is actually way better than we think, or it gets used differently. Whatever. These are just like our first thoughts from the competitive scene and like the first month or so of playing him. Um, but yeah, enough said. Let's just get right into the basic stats. We'll get over these pretty quickly. Shakespeare is a melee fighter with 13 health. He is move 2 and he has 3 melee sidekicks with 1 health each, being the actors. 13 health is pretty low for a melee fighter. Being move 2 as well doesn't help with that a lot. Having 3 sidekicks, however, is always great for a low health melee fighter just because he can body block with them, he can hide behind them, he can send them in to get some pressure onto the opponent without endangering Shakespeare himself. Um, Plus, it gives him a bit more board control, so he probably doesn't have to boost as often, or can like take control over multiple items on item maps. It's just always great to have them. However, as always, it's one health sidekick, so they're pretty squishy and will surely die off at some point. Um, and then 12 unique cards makes your deck quite consistent. However, your ability will mess that up a bit. So let's just get right into it. Your character ability says Iambic Pentameter. It says after you attack or defend, add your card to your line. When your line has 10 or more syllables, discard your line. If there are exactly 10 syllables, resolve the completion effect on the last card. Okay, we'll get into what that exactly means a bit like on the next slide. But to start with, it's similar to Little Red, where you have to play a kind of puzzle game with your cards to get the best value out of them. Similar as you want to line up her symbols with red, you want to line up your syllables with Shakespeare. Um, in this case, however, you are not trying that with every new card that you play. Now you're working towards a bigger goal, that being to complete your line, so you get the completion effect on the last card of your line. So you're kind of like maybe working 3 or 4 cards to get the completion effect on the fourth or maybe fifth one. Um, your deck has cards with 2, 4, or 6 syllables. So the maximum length for a line is 5 cards if you play 5 cards with 2 syllables after each other. Um, and the minimum is 2 cards if you play, for example, a 6 syllable and a 4 syllable card. Um, since your opponent, however, will always know which cards are in your line, they will also know how many syllables you already have, and then can probably deduce which cards you want to play next to complete your line. So they will try to mess that up as much as possible. You still have ways to play around that, but as always, if there is like some kind of puzzle game and the opponent has knowledge on it, they can of course react according to it. Um, in your deck, you have 15 cards with 2 syllables, 10 with 4 syllables, and 5 with 6 syllables. So you're most likely to have like a bit of variety in your hand most often. And since the 6 syllable cards are, of course, the ones that are hardest to actually conclude, because you have to have exactly 4, and once you like, exceed that number, you can't play a 6 syllable card anymore to complete your line. And 2 syllable cards, of course, being the ones that are easiest to complete with, since you have always kind of room for them. Um, So I think the order there makes kind of sense. But yeah, let's just get into how exactly this works. With your ability, let's assume Shakespeare attacks first action with All Are Punished, which is the first card. As you can see on the left in the yellow circle, there is a small blue number that is the syllable count. You can also count under the cards themselves with the blue dots. With All Are Punished, it's 4 syllables. Um, Let's say next up you defend with Deceive, which has 2 syllables, so you get up to 6. And then after that you attack again with All Are Punished, which has 4 syllables again, meaning you would end at exactly 10. And then the completion effect of the last card, being the second All Are Punished, would actually come into play. The completion effects on each card are these wonderful blue ones on the bottom with the feather there. Um, and as you can see in this case, it would be draw 1 card. Um, Only the completion effect on the last card will resolve, and once your line is at 10 syllables or exceeds that number, it gets discarded, it gets put in your normal discard pile, and you start a new line to work towards. One important thing, if you have to discard cards, maybe for boosting at the end of turn or just discard from your opponent, random discard, whatever, those cards will not get added to your line. It's only the cards that you play in a combat. Um, and it doesn't matter if it's Shakespeare playing or the actors. If you're in a combat and play a card, the card will get added to your line. All right. I think enough about the ability. Let's just jump right into the cards. With the first one being My Kingdom for Horse. It's a 5 value attack with a boost value of 3. Only Shakespeare can play it. It has a syllable count of 6, and you have 3 copies. It has no direct effect, but if you complete your line with it, it says gain 2 actions. Alright, 5 value attacks, of course, are really good. We know it from Hunter's Eye on Robin Hood, Commanding Impact, maybe. 5 value attacks are already like pretty nice to have. Usually block value is like averaged out on 3, so you will deal 2 damage with a 5 value attack, which is really good. However, the key in this card is of course the completion effect. Gaining 2 actions can lead to huge combo turns. I mean, you're already attacking with a 5 value attack into your opponent. So they will probably play like, even if they did play their best block, you still have 2 actions afterwards if you manage to complete your line with this. This card can single-handedly swing games, and if you actually make it so that you can play 2 of these in one turn, or maybe all 3 of them, that is insane value, because of course you have the option to attack with this first action, complete your line gets discarded. You can play a 4 syllable card next, and then another one of these. With your next 2 actions, you gain another 2. And, well, you see that could technically go on infinitely if you had infinite cards and infinite of these, but yeah, it can lead to some really scary turns. Meaning every time you are at 4 syllables in your line, this card is a huge threat for the opponent, and they will always think about it. Um, However, since it is a 6 syllable card, once you exceed that 4 syllable count, well, the opponent probably knows it will not be this because, well, if you don't get the 2 actions, it is only a blank 5. Only. It's still a really good card. Um, so it is a bit harder. Um, to actually get the completion effect, and your opponent will anticipate when it's coming. However, you can also try to first action attack with it when you have no syllables to punish something because they won't play their optimal block because they're not expecting this. So this card is just a huge threat, um, very, very versatile, and I will give this line completion effect a total 5 out of 5. If you can somehow get this, do it. Oh, and also one thing I forgot. If the opponent feints your attack, the line completion effect will not get feinted. So that will still happen if your turn doesn't end before that. Um, so yeah, if you can get this effect, always go for it. I think there is never a case where you don't play this card, basically. Next up, we have Horror. It is a 4-value attack for Shakespeare. With a boost value of 3, it has 2 syllables, and you have 5 copies of it. It says, during combat, increase the value of this card by +1 for each Horror card in your line. And then the completion effect says, deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter for each other card in your line. So, that is a lot on one card. Let's start with like the simple ones. 4-value attacks are already pretty good. They usually deal like 1 damage, maybe 2 if the opponent try to feint. So yeah, they are already pretty good. However, this is the first 5 copy card in the game, which is insane. That's really cool. We have never seen that before. And since there are 5 copies of this card, the effect can bring this up to an 8-value attack. Of course, your line has a max of 10 syllables, or yeah, you could go higher, but that means you're like getting more and not getting the effect. However, if you only play like horrors in the line, well, you can only play 4 other horrors before playing the 5th one, of course, because you only have 5. So you could have 4 other horrors in your line, getting to 8 syllables. This would be an 8-value attack, which is already insane. But then the line completion effect is even better because you deal 1 damage for each other card in your line. In that case, you would deal another 4 damage, which means this could be technically a 12-value attack, which is insane. I mean, you will probably never get it because you have to have all 5 horrors in consecutive order and probably not defend in between. It's really unlikely, but it could happen. Um, However, I want to deep dive a bit on what this line completion effect actually means, because it may sound a bit better than it actually is. The completion effect, of course, rewards you for a bit of a riskier playstyle. Um, if you complete your line with this, and want to get max value, you of course have to have played 4 other cards before that. And since you can technically already complete your line with 2 cards, that means you are not getting as many completion effects as you would otherwise. So you could see this as you getting one of these or 2 other effects usually. So it is a bit of a risky play to actually go for full value with this. However, it can be huge auto damage potential. It depends on the matchup. For example, against Luke Cage, this is one of your big game changers. Like, if you can kind of combine this after a horse turn when you know he doesn't have Trash Dog to end your turn, yeah, this can be insane. Um, However, from my experience, this is just best used as a finisher at any point. And not so much in combination with other horrors, because first of all, you're not so likely to have multiple ones at the same time. Even though it is a 5 copy card, you will probably not have more than one other horror in your line before playing this. Plus, any type of auto damage is already good, and since this is a 2-syllable card, it is pretty versatile to complete your line with. And you will get rewarded anyways. I don't think you have to go for max value with this. Even if you have like 2 4-syllable cards there and you would only get 2 ping, it's still 2 ping. That makes this basically a 6-value attack, which is already pretty good. Like, that's actually really good. So I think you just use this as a good finisher of your line if you have only if you already have 8 syllables there. And then the completion effect is still really good because it's all the damage that the opponent can't do anything about, even if they faint. So yeah, again, completion effect 5 out of 5 for me. I mean, there are cases where you actually go for full value with his card, but I don't think it will happen that often. Next up, we have All Are Punished. It is another 4-value attack. Wow, Shakespeare likes these 4-value attacks. With a boost value of 2, it has 4 syllables. You have 2 copies, and it is an any card. So the actors can use this. It says after combat, deal 1 damage to each other fighter in your zone. And the completion effect says draw 1 card. Again, 4 value attacks are good. The ping after combat basically makes this a 5 value attack in most cases. I mean, the opponent can avoid it by feinting, in which case you are still pretty happy because you dealt 2 damage over the feint. They can avoid it by moving themselves or you, which is not that likely, but I mean, it can happen, so kind of 50-50. Or if you just are not in their zone while you're attacking. Maybe they are in a hard cutoff space where you can't reach them without boosting otherwise, or whatever. Um, but it's usually like a 5, like 50% of the time, which is even better. Like, that's a really good attack. And the actors being able to throw this actually makes them pretty scary. So you don't have to go with Shakespeare out every time to actually get good hits. No, the actors can do stuff. The actors can do nasty things. Um, of course, with every 1 ping, this can be helpful to deal with 1 health sidekicks. If you're maybe fighting Robin Hood, this can just wipe out all of his outlaws if he is not careful. Um, However, since this says it deals 1 damage to each other fighter and not each other opposing fighter, this can hit your other fighters. It will not hit the actor or Shakespeare himself who is attacking with this, but if you have like another actor in your fighter's zone, that actor will take 1 damage and die. So don't forget about that. It happened to me a couple of times when I wasn't careful enough and just forgot about it. Don't forget, because you want your actors to keep to stay alive to protect Shakespeare, and if you kill some of them with this card, that feels really bad. The completion effect, draw 1 card, well, it's pretty mediocre. It's not that great. I think you'd rather have something else. But since Shakespeare has like almost no real card draw on his cards except for regroup, which we'll get to, basically it can be nice to keep up pressure. Yeah. Um, but I mean, this is a 4-syllable card, so what I think is like when you would complete a line with this, of course you would be at 6 syllables in your line. And I think it's almost always better to just attack with a 2-syllable card instead, maybe a horror, and then get some of the 2-syllable completion effect online just because you have way more of them. So you're more versatile. The opponent doesn't really know what's coming. You have more options. And how I like to use this card is as a setup. For example, if you're able to double attack the opponent, attack with this first. So then you are at this magical number 4, so you are threatening horse. And even if you can't throw it because you don't have it or you just don't want to, the opponent is scared about it. And I think that's just a way better use of these 4-syllable cards. Than actually going for the completion effect. I think that almost counts for every single one of them, except like maybe one, which we'll get to. Um, but yeah, I think you just rather play a 2-syllable card to have like more options next. But yeah, of course, it always depends on the situation. Like drawing 1 isn't the worst thing. It's still pretty good to keep up pressure because Shakespeare is all about pressure. If you give the opponent too much time and too much room, they will find a way to get good hits onto Shakespeare himself, and then, well, he only has 13 HP, so he will die at some point. Um, so yeah, completion effect gets a 2 out of 5 from me. It's not the worst, but you have definitely way better options usually. Next up, we have Places. Places. It's a 3-value attack, any, with a boost value of 1. It has 4 syllables, and you have 2 copies of it. It says, after combat, move each actor up to 3 spaces, and the completion effect is place Shakespeare in a zone with no actors. Well, 3-value attacks are pretty mediocre. Since average block value is 3, they usually won't deal as much damage. So like they will probably be played for their effect. Being able to move each actor can be nice to kite with advantage, meaning you maneuver, attack the opponent, and then can actually move your fighter away again if you're attacking with an actor. So they can't just attack themselves, but they have to maneuver first and then attack, meaning you will probably be able to double attack them next turn if they don't play a movement card as well. Um, That can be pretty nice. However, the line completion effect is just it's a double-edged sword. I mean, placing Shakespeare in a zone with no actors is kind of good because you will probably be like far away from the opponent, and since you planned for this when playing this card. You probably like placed your actors in zones where you don't want to place Shakespeare. So you'll probably be far away like from the opposing hero, but if they should still be able to reach him some way, well, you have no actors somewhere near you, so huh, you'll probably be unprotected. In that case, Shakespeare will take big damage, and Shakespeare's defenses suck. Um, so that's not great. And again, this is a four-syllable card, so just with All Are Punished, I think there are just so many better options. Play a two-syllable card, and you have like half of your deck online with completion effects, out of which some will be way more useful than this. Or you just play this as a setup for Horse again, or for your other six-syllable card, which we'll get to in the near future, and it will probably be better. This is kind of just like a mediocre card. It won't really deal damage. The effect is okay, and the line completion effect is, well, it's there. You won't complain if you have to play this to complete your line and still get it, but there are just better things. I'll give this completion effect a 1 out of 5. It's even more situational than the draw. The draw at least like helps you keep up pressure. This can help you run away, but I think it's not as great. Next up, we get to the versatile cards, and spoiler alert, Shakespeare does not have any block only or scheme cards. So, well, we will be stuck with the versatiles for a while now. We have a 2 Brute. It is a 3-value versatile Annie with a boost value of 3, 4 syllables. You have 2 copies of it, and it says during combat, increase the value of this card by +1 for each of your fighters adjacent to the opposing fighter. And the line completion effect is place each of your fighters in any space. So 3-value versatiles are good. They're like average block value. You don't really complain about them. However, this is your highest value block if you set it up right. This can be upwards of a 7-value card since you have 4 fighters on the board at max. So you could get all of them to be adjacent to the opposing fighter on some maps. On some you can't. Um, but even if you only have Shakespeare adjacent to the opposing fighter because you probably only defend Shakespeare with this card, usually, it will still usually be a 4 because, well, against all melee fighters, this will always be a 4 because the fighter that you are playing this card with will be adjacent to them when they are attacking because they are melee. Um, and if you are attacking with this card, well, you will be adjacent to the opposing fighter because you are melee. So it will basically always be a 4, except if you're playing it on defense against range fighters. But I think in that case, you have other block options, and even against range fighters, you can often force adjacency to make this at least a 4. So this card is just a really good value block overall. Um, the align completion effect, however, is basically just places places, but in better, because with places places you have to place Shakespeare in a zone with no actors, and it's only Shakespeare. With this you can place everyone anywhere, which is just better in every way. Like all the time this is better. Um, Usually this is like your best defensive setup for horse because if you just completed your line, went in, attacked, yeah, line got completed, you're standing next to them, they attack you, you play this as your first block, you have 4 syllables there, and then there, ooh, damn, now he has 4 syllables, now he can play horse. Um, this is your best way for that. However, of course, your opponent can then still try to attack again, in which case you might even want to take sometimes, just to keep your 4 syllable count. But yeah, this card is just decent overall. It has like everything about it is good. It's usually a 4-value block, which is a max value block. You can't complain about it. The completion effect is actually pretty good, just to be able to warp anywhere on the board with all of your fighters. This is like probably the only 4-syllable completion effect that I actually like and sometimes use, just because it gives like it has so many options. You can kite with advantage with this. You can get everyone to safety if you want. It's just a decent effect overall. Of course, there are still better ones, where you maybe recover health, draw cards, or deal damage, which usually I prefer, just because Shakespeare is a aggressive fighter and should pressure the opponent as much as possible to not get hit as often. And the best way of doing that is, of course, well, getting the opponent to worry about their health, so they have to run away. But if you at some point should be scared a bit and should have to run away, this card is probably your best option for that if you complete the line. So yeah, decent overall. Really good card. Let's get to the next one. It's Once More Unto the Breach. It is a 3 value versatile, this time for Shakespeare only. It's a boost value of 6 syllables, and you have 2 copies. So this is the second 6 syllables card in your deck, and the only other one next to horse. So it's always like kind of a thing between this or horse. Um, and well, we'll see that both of them have like big things going for them. 3 value versatiles, of course, are pretty good. It's average block value, you don't really complain. Um, the after combat effect of this says return a defeated actor to any space in Shakespeare's zone. That is already pretty good because, hey, it's another 1 health sidekick to body block with. Just playing that would mean you have at least 5 of them, which is like pretty good. That's Dusa level 1 health sidekicks, and that's like at least 5 cards that the opponent wastes getting to your actual hero, which is really good. Um, but it gets even crazier because the completion effect is return all defeated actors to spaces in Shakespeare's zone. So this already sounds really scary. Because if you play this max value, this could mean that you get a total of 9 1 health sidekicks, which is insane. Like, that's Muldoon level. That would just shut down any melee character forever, because they will never be able to attack Shakespeare himself. Um, However, it is not that easy, because, of course, you only get max value out of this if all of your actors are already dead, which, like, often doesn't even happen because the opponent might kill 1 or 2, and then they will probably already be able to reach Shakespeare every turn. Um, so this would get like a max of 2 revive, which is still really good. But in that case, it's probably not as crucial to get, because you're only getting 2 back, and well, it's a 6 syllable card. So you could just play a horse instead if you're attacking. If you're defending, you could do a 4 syllable card like a 2 brute to block more damage, and then go for a 2 syllable card to have like more options. Um, so the value of the completion effect often isn't that great. I mean, it's still really good. Like, this completion effect is still one of the best, but don't shy away from using this without the completion effect, because just getting 5 sidekicks is still a lot. And I think this being 6 syllable card, you just have way better options to complete your line with, to actually pressure. However, in some matchups, this can just win you games. If you're playing against melee only fighters, you don't really have like ways to get through 1 of sidekicks that great. Maybe Sinbad or I don't know, Moon Knight it can work against. Yeah, you can definitely just body block for like the whole game. That can work. Um, but yeah, you have to play this with Shakespeare himself, so he will be vulnerable in that time. Um, but yeah, it's just a good card overall. The line completion effect still gets a 4 out of 5 from me because if you manage to get all 3 actors, that's insane value. If you get 2 actors, that's good value. And if you could only get one, well, you probably don't play for the line completion. Oh yeah. Next one, we have Alas. Probably my favorite card in the deck, and in my opinion, also the most important card in the deck. Yeah, people might scream, yeah, but horse. Yeah, you won't get to play your horses if you don't get this. Um, it's a 2 value versatile for Shakespeare with a boost value of 2. It has 2 syllables, and you have 2 copies of it. It says, after combat, if you lost the combat, Shakespeare recovers 1 health. But then the completion effect says, draw 2 cards. Shakespeare recovers 2 health. Okay, so 2 value versatiles are usually play for their effects. Like they won't deal damage, they won't block as much damage. Um, the effect itself, recovering 1 health if you lost, kind of brings this up to a blank 3 value block on defense. Um, Usually, like you could still get killed over it before you actually heal, so it can still be just a 2, but usually it's a 3 value block. Or if you attack with it, well, it's a 2 value attack that heals you for 1 usually, which is like not that great. It's okay if you just want to get the healing to get out of a lethal threshold or something like that. Um, but it's not great because you usually won't deal damage with it. The line completion effect, however, is huge. This is probably the most important line completion effect you have. Um, this is your only healing in a deck, so you could get upwards to like 6 healing with this card if you play it optimally, getting this to basically a 5 value block every time we play it, with like upsides, because if your opponent attack for lower than that, you will actually heal over the amount of damage that they dealt. Um, Plus drawing 2 cards, you don't have card draw on your normal cards except regroup, so this is a huge swing. This is already like so much better than any of um, the 4 cards that draw you 1 card after combat, um, with a completion effect. This is already so much better. That's why I said that I don't really like completing lines with the 4 cards, just because you have the 2 cards, the 2 silver cards that are just so much more versatile, so much better. Um, I mean, this is crucial to your deck. You almost always need this to keep up pressure, to actually get Shakespeare's health back up, because, well, if you want to go for horror attacks or horse attacks, you will have to go adjacent to the opposing hero usually, and that means Shakespeare is vulnerable. So you will need this health, you will need those cards to actually defend yourself and make them scared. This is easily a 5 out of 5 completion effect, and like I said, probably the best card in your deck, and the most crucial one. Next up, we get another really strong card, which is Deceive. It is a 2 value versatile any with a boost value of 1. It has 2 syllables, 3 copies. It says immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. And the completion effect is return this card to your hand. Okay, so this is basically just a renamed Feint. It does exactly the same as Feint. They just had to rename the card because, well, Feint would only be 1 syllable and that wouldn't fit with the deck. Um, Canceling effects, however, is great as always. It can shut down certain archetypes of fighters like Houdini, Little Red, Sinbad. Their Feint is just insanely good. Uh, the, the completion effect, however, is also really nice. Um, Being able to return this to your hand just means, well, you have technically infinite feints if you always play this to complete the line. It's usually not what you want to do, but since Shakespeare's blocks are just pretty bad overall, like a two rotate and once more into the breach are the only actual 3 or higher value blocks. I mean, yeah, alas is usually a 3, but it's still like basically print 2 and only heals after the damage is dealt. Since you don't really have that many good defenses, even getting a feint just becomes like one of your best defenses. So getting that back is really, really good. Um, like even more so against those effect-based fighters. Um, and also this adds at least a bit of survivability to you because you cancel like after combat damage effects, you cancel their movement, so you might be able to double attack next turn or whatever. And since you can recur this feint, it also makes like offensive feinting a bit safer with Shakespeare because you can just return the card and then you still have it as an option on defense. So this is just a bit more of a versatile feint, and I would give this completion effect a 4 out of 5 just because in some matchups it will just win you the game if you have additional feints, and even in the other ones it's really useful just like to get free double attacks, um, or just to cancel whatever they want to do. So yeah, really, really good. Next up, I hate this card so much. It's the Ides of March. It is a 2 value versatile for Shakespeare only, 2 boost value, 4 syllables, and you have 2 copies. It has no effect, and the line completion is deal 2 damage to any opposing fighter. Well, 2 value versatiles usually get played for their effects. Well, nice to see that this one doesn't even have an effect. Holy, this is by far the worst card in your deck on its own. Um, if you don't play this for the completion, it's just a blank 2, which is abysmal. Like, that is so bad. Holy, you'd rather block with something like a regroup because you at least draw 1 card from it. Why, it's so bad. And, like, attacking doesn't even do anything. Like, it just wastes cards and you don't even get another card back for it, like, from regroup. This card is so shittily bad. Um, the completion effect looks kinda nice because you can deal 2 damage. Auto damage is always great. However, if you play it on defense to complete, well, you're playing a 2 value block. So if they play anything like 4, if they play a 4 value attack, well, you're even. You take 2, they take 2. But they will probably have more health because you were a 13 health fighter with insanely bad blocks. Um, so yeah, you can't really afford taking that much damage. If you attack with it to complete the line, yeah, it's pretty decent. I mean, it's 2 auto damage that the opponent can feint. You don't really complain about that. However, you could just like attack twice with like something and then horror, and then well, horror always deals at least 2 damage to the opposing fighter and maybe more, and it is a print 4, so it is just better in all ways. Um, I mean, yeah, this card is just kind of useless overall. The only thing it has going for it is that it deals the 2 damage to any opposing fighter. So you could maybe ping off like one of Yenenga's archers with it instead of dealing it back to Yen herself, in which case she can like split the damage between her and an archer. So that's like the only thing it has going for it. Or maybe if like you play this while defending against a sidekick, maybe if like Robin Hood's outlaws attack you with a highway robbery, you could play this. Um, to defend, in which case, well, the value gets ignored, but at least you deal 2 damage back to either Robin or any outlaw that you want to kill, in which case it is decent, but I think it's just, it's so underwhelming. Like, the effect sounds way better than it is. I'd still give it a 3 out of 5 just because it is 2 auto damage, you don't really complain about that, and if you get it, yeah, it's okay. Um, but yeah, again, it's also a 4 syllable card, so you'd rather just play 2-1 and then after that, alas or deceive or whatever horror. You have so many better options. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you play this blank, it's just insanely bad. Yeah, line completion 3 out of 5 at best, probably lower usually. And then we'll get to revise, which is basically a regroup in disguise. Holy, that rhymes. I'm getting shake. Oh my god, I'm just new Shakespeare. Call me Shakespeare from now on. It is a 1 value versatile any boost value of 2, 2 syllables, 2 copies. It says after combat, draw 1 card. If you won the combat, draw 2 cards instead. And the completion effect is move each fighter up to 2 spaces. This includes opposing fighters. So yeah, this is exactly regroup effect-wise, which means, I mean, it is the only actual card draw in your deck if you don't use your line completion effect to draw. So that is like pretty good. And as always, regroup is a great bait attack um, because the opponent probably wasted a good block card on it, which was like usually at least a 3 value. Um, so that block card kind of didn't do anything. And you got a card to replace your regroup in hand, so you're keeping up pressure, which is like really good in Shakespeare's deck, even more so again as in like other decks maybe. Um, so yeah, just great bait attack overall. The completion effect is pretty nice. Um, like moving each fighter up to 2 spaces can like get you to safety. You can create basically a 4 spaces gap between you and the opponent if you want to. Um, or like you can move yourself behind your actor line again and still move the opponent away. But since this is on a 2 syllable card, I think there are just way, way, way more like better effects than this, which you could actually choose to go for. Maybe like Alas, Deceive, Horror. Um, I mean, you still don't really complain about this if you complete your line with this as a bait attack, because you draw your card, they lose a defense card, and you can still like create a gap to be safe again. But in the rare cases where you actually go to attack with Shakespeare himself, well, you can attack with something better, and the actors also basically have a better version of Regroup in their disposal, which they could play. It's still a good card overall. Not really great, but I mean, it's just regroup, so you know what to get from it. I give the completion effect a 2 out of 5. It's okay. I mean, you have a better version of it again in a 2 brute on a 4 syllable card, but the movement is nice. Just not as like game changing as maybe dealing 3 or 4 auto as with horror, or healing 2 and draw 2 with the last, or getting a faint back. And then we'll get to the last 2 cards being actor-only cards. First of all, we have Such Sweet Sorrow, which is a 4 value versatile for the actors. With a boost value of 2, it has 4 syllables. You have 2 copies of it. It says after combat, move your fighter up to 2 spaces. And the completion effect is draw 1 card. 4 value versatiles are great. Like, that's a max value block. You could also play it as a 4 value attack, which usually will deal at least 1 damage. It's just really good. This gives your actors a surprisingly good survivability, because you can block with this and it will block against anything that like doesn't really have like instant pain damage after combat, or like is a 5 value attack. Moving it up to 2 spaces also means you can avoid something like wily fighting or zone ping effects if like the opponent should have that. Um, or you could just get away from a double attack if you went in and attacked with your actor with maybe all are punished, and the opponent plans to double attack the actor back to ensure that the actor is dead. You could just play this first action attack, and well, you move away, the actor still lives, the opponent can't attack again, which is really good. Um, the completion effect, however, is the same as on All Are Punished, meaning, yeah, the draw is okay, um, but there are just way more better options. This is, however, again, really nice to set up my Kingdom 4 horse, because, yeah, you might go in and attack with the actors or something, complete your line. You play this on defense, get 4 syllables, move away, meaning the opponent won't be able to attack you again usually, and then you can go in with Shakespeare and smack them with a horse. So that's really good. Um, and even attacking with this, it's another print 4 that the actors can swing with. So yeah, pretty good. However, line completion effect, well, 2 out of 5. It's okay, I guess, but not great. And then we get to the last card, being, again, it is a 3 value versatile for the actors. It has a booster of 2 syllables, and you have 3 copies. It says, after combat, you may return the first card in your line to your hand before you add this to your line. And the completion effect is draw 1 card. So 3 value versatiles are good. Like average block value, probably won't deal damage. Maybe if it gets fainted, at least 1. So yeah, it's okay. Being able to return the first card in your line, however, is great. Wow, you have some line control to actually like return past mistakes if you had to do something that you didn't want to. Um, if you had to play a card suboptimally, maybe, um, and maybe like you were at 2 syllables and had to defend with a 2 brute since they attacked Shakespeare again, and now you can't go for a horse, well, you can just like play this to return 2 syllable card, play this to return it again, and then you will return the four-syllable card because that will be the first card in your line after. And well, you will be at four again, and like horse is online again. Once more into the breach is online again. But even if like you don't want to correct your syllables with this, you can still get other cards back, meaning you can get even more feints. You could get additional horses if you like maybe played it without the completion effect to maybe like punish a feint or something. You can still get the horse back to keep the threat of it. Um, there are just so many good options with this. You could also get back once more into the breach, which you maybe played to only get one actor back, which would still be a pretty good use case, and you can get that back, and well, you got another one. So you already got like three extra sidekicks. This card is just insanely versatile, and on top of that, it can loop itself, technically. If the opponent just always attacks the actors, and the actors always attack back, they can always recur again with again, and that can create an infinite loop if it doesn't get cancelled, um, which is really good. Like, I love Hands from Little Red. This is, yeah, really good. And this is also the card that, like, is just regrouping better because you know what you're getting. Um, Plus, it's a 3 value versatile, so yeah, really, really good card. The completion effect, might be the same as on Sorrow or Punished, but in my opinion is a bit worse. Just because, well, you can return a card from your line before, so usually if you didn't fuck up your line and like would end at more syllables otherwise, which doesn't even matter because that can't happen. I don't know, I'm stupid. So the only way you actually get this draw one if you don't add the first card from your line back to hand, which just doesn't make sense. Like you play this to get the first card back, which means you know the first card, so that's already better than like drawing one random card from your deck because you don't know what that will be. Um, yeah, this line completion effect will never actually happen, so it will be a 1. I could put it at a 0 just for fun because it will never happen. Um, but yeah, it's there just to have a line completion effect, basically. Um, or if you maybe don't want the first card from your line, you don't have anything else, and you desperately need to draw. Okay, maybe you have a 1 in 30 chance to get a better card. Whatever. Yeah, and that wraps it up for Shakespeare. For the conclusion, Shakespeare is a really versatile card fighter with the tools to handle almost any matchup. With the tools, you technically have everything you need. You have a shit ton of damage with horses and combo potential. You have a lot of auto damage with horrors or Ides of March. You have a good amount of draw with Alas and like the other completion effects. You can recur your feints, you can recur other cards with again, you have a bit of healing, you have technically 9 1 health sidekicks. So yeah, you have technically everything you need in every matchup. Of course, you don't get that every single time because he is insanely hard to play right. You almost always have to know which win condition you are relying on. If you're playing against Sinbad, well, you probably just want to recur all your once more onto the breach and like get as many sidekicks in the way as possible because you won't actually pressure him because it's Sinbad. He will draw like a maniac. Then you can recur your feints and you're probably good. Against Bigfoot, probably the same. You want to try to outvalue him. Against others, maybe Little Red, well, you have to go for a good horse turn. Um, and that will differ in every single matchup. So you always kind of have to decide which line completion effects you actually want to go for, because you will probably get only like 1/3 of them in the deck. So you kind of have to get those 10 effects that you will get throughout the game, maybe even less. Um, and actually try to plan around them to get the best ones possible, and even then, deck order can screw you up. Um, since most of his big attacks rely on himself to attack, horse or horror to be precise, he will often be vulnerable to big counter attacks. After that, if you complete your line, with the attacks. You don't actually have a way to escape a double attack afterwards, because you don't have any movement on your normal block cards. So being a 13 health melee fighter, taking two big hits in return will hurt you very much. So you have to be really sure when to actually go for like your horse turn or horrors or whatever. Whenever you put Shakespeare in danger, you have to really take into consideration what the consequences might be. Um, that combined with the fact that the opponent can kind of mess with your line makes him pretty inconsistent. If you have four cards in your line, um, and it's your opponent's turn, well, they probably go in and attack you as much as possible to force you to play cards so you don't have horses online. If you have like two syllables in your line, well, the opponent will probably not attack you so that you can't play a two-syllable card to get horses online. And you kind of get what I'm saying there. Whatever the opponent is scared of at that point, they can just play around it because they can either attack to force you to play cards or not attack, so you can't play cards. So they can either force you to increase your line or take it, um, or they can force you to not do anything with your line, which is pretty bad usually. Um, from my experience, Shakespeare is all about pressures, so it all depends on where your horses and the lasses are. If you get them early and can get like an early horse turn to pressure their hand size, and after that like a good Alas on defense to like get some health back and draw cards, you're usually pretty good. If you can't find one of them early, you won't have anything to pressure their hand size. They will deal you big damage back, and you will be the one running. At which point you are almost done for, because they will find ways to get through your actors and then actually get the last bit of damage. He is still a fun fighter to play as or against because like you have so many options. The opponent has like good counterplay. So yeah, it is fun, but he might not be the strongest. However, he definitely has his matchups. Then just to kind of round out the whole card stuff with the completion tier list, as always, this can change depending on the matchup, game state, or personal preferences. This just sums up where I put all of the completion effects. The bad ones that you probably never even use are again and places places. The fine ones, which you're okay with, are sorrow, punished, and revise. The decent ones that might come up here or there are Ides of March and a Tu Brute. The good ones that you will probably aim for in like many matches are Deceive and Once More Onto the Breach, and the ones that you almost always want, in my opinion, the great ones are Alas, Horse, and Horror. And then getting to the card tier list, in my opinion, the only real D tier card you have is Ides, because a blank 2 value versatile is insanely bad, and you just have so many more better options. Like, it's usually just kind of in your way in your hand, from what I've seen. Um, C tier also only has one card, in my opinion, being Places. Um, I mean, it's okay to kite with advantage, and if you don't have anything else to attack with the actors, yeah, sure, go for it, but I mean, it's not great. It's just really average overall. Um, in B tier, I have Once More Into the Breach, which might surprise some of you. Um, yeah, getting extra body blocks is good. It's a 3 value versatile, which is like already one of your best blocks. Um, but it just like 6 syllables. It takes so much room in your line, and the completion effect is kind of varied on how actually good it is. Um, so I'm not the biggest fan, just because I like to play Shakespeare as a pressure fighter, meaning I try to draw as much as possible and deal as much damage as possible. And this card just doesn't really fit that. So maybe, yeah, it might be really good in some matchups, but I think it's just decent overall. Um, Regroup or Revise in this case um, is probably a bit better in Shakespeare's deck than in usual decks, just because Shakespeare is all about pressure and replacing your card in your hand is really good. Plus, it is a two-syllable card, so you can like you're really versatile with what you want to do with it, setting up different cards. Um, Plus, you have the option of the completion effect, which already makes this better than other regroups. And then lastly, in B tier, I have Such Sweet Sorrow. Um, yeah, just good card overall. You don't complain about the 4 value versatile. A bit sad that only the actors can use it because I think Shakespeare definitely needs it. But yeah. Then in A tier, we have again recursion of any card you want basically. It's really good. All are punished. You don't complain about technically 5 value attacks. Um, Et tu Brute, 4 value block, best block you have, really good. And then Deceive, being able to recur feints, always good. And then the S tier cards, the ones that you rely on every game. Well, it's a last horse in horror. I think that is no surprise to anyone. Those are like your best cards by far, and you need those to win. The other ones are nice as well, but these three are necessary every time. And then we get to the matchups. Of course, this is only based on personal experiences, so feel free to disagree in the comments. And keep in mind, Shakespeare is a pretty new fighter, so some of these matchups might change as people get more time to try them and find new strategies as either character. Um, the don't try it here is basically fighters that either just kill you way too fast or that you can't kill. Being Strange, Sherlock, and Elektra, which just run away the whole time and you don't have passes, so, well, that's it. And Ghost Rider, Bullseye, Settler, which you can't do anything against because Bullseye will roam through you and, well, he will never attack you, so you will almost never get your line completion. And you're only 13 health melee, plus you will kill your actress the whole time. Bullseye can just pressure you way too much with his draw to mess up your lines, and Sattler, well, she survives you and has so much auto damage, yeah, you're dead. Then the slightly bad ones are the ones where I say, okay, if you have good draw order and like can really perfect your completion effects, I think you still have a shot in these ones. Um, like a good chance. They might slip up to even at that point. Um, Most notable ones are like Bigfoot, who you can technically outvalue, Moon Knight, where you can do the InGen thing, um, She-Hulk a bit can work, maybe, um, and Titania from the own set, where Butter Dream is just a menace. Um, the even ones are like, yeah, they're just even overall. It's usually the other characters that rely on combo potential, like Raptors, Bruce Lee. Um, where it's just about yeah who gets the biggest combo first. Sisters as well. Um, Yenenga might be a bit of a notable one just because Yen doesn't have card draw, so one of Shakespeare's biggest weaknesses, not having normal draw himself really, is a bit negated on that one. And if you can get one or two good horses in a row, you can actually pressure Yen down. So it can happen. I would still say it's slightly Yenenga favored just because she is more consistent, has more options, but I definitely think Shakespeare has a shot. Um, and then the favorite ones, I would say, are the ones that Shakespeare actually can just pressure that much to make them play suboptimally, being Red, Widow, Golden Bat, Daredevil, most notably, where he can just like combo them to death usually. And then the free win ones are ones where I just say, well, they don't really have the tools to deal with him at all. Um, so you can either just combo them or basically almost perfect his line, and at that point, Shakespeare is probably like one of the biggest menaces in all of Unmatched. Um, but yeah. Concerning maps, Shakespeare of course likes smaller maps to reach the opponent without boosting too often, because he doesn't have passes, so he will usually have initiative, so he will have to approach as a move to melee fighter. So smaller maps already benefit him. So he has 4 bodies, so he wants to reach as often as possible without wasting resources. Um, However, he also wants to be able to hide behind his actors if needed, even against range fighters. So any like pocket cards are really good for him. Um, in my opinion, the top three are Raptor Paddock, which is just like great overall. You have many movement effects on your completion effects, so there might be some cases where you can like set up some soft pins and then really like do something. The completion effect on Revise is actually insanely good on Raptor Paddock just because you can move the opponent into the pit and then like start a good horse turn if you can set that up well. And other than that, it's still really like tight. You have many spots where you can force adjacency for ranged fighters, so yeah. Then the new one, Globe Theater, I would also say is really good for him just because of the single zones and the um like dual zones where it's only two spaces who actually are in the zone. Um, I don't know if there's like an official wording for that yet because single zones and dual zones are like usually something else. But I think you get what I mean. Um, it's just really good to hide Shakespeare, and it's a really small map still. And then third one, I would go with Sunnydale. You have the purple where you can hide pretty well with Shakespeare, and it's still a pretty tight move for center map. So yeah, those are like the three ones that I would go for as Shakespeare usually. And yeah, thanks for watching. Feel free to write feedback or questions in the comments. Just like I said, I have to repeat it the last time. This is a new character, so if you have like made any other experiences with him in certain matchups or what he likes, what he doesn't like, if you like maybe really like Ides of March for some reason. I don't think anyone likes that card, but if you do, um, yeah, share why. I'm definitely interested in it because I really like Shakespeare as a concept and I would like to make him work even better. Also, please tell me which character you want me to cover next. Yeah, I've seen the Black Panther requests. I've seen it, I've seen it, I've seen it, I've seen it. Plan for next time are InGen, and after that, I've fallen in love with the Wayward sisters, so I want to cover them. So yeah, until next time.